Okay, carrying on with the very interesting conversation with Bernt Johansson, one of the best casters in the world.
Yeah, when the rule came that you had to have a laser marked line,
Yeah.
right, for the World Championships, the first two lines I bought, one of them, and they were both laser marked, no problem at all. And I think the weight of the lines are normally, if you weigh the whole line, it's around 25 to 27 grams.
Yeah.
That's where it is normally. This one was 34. So it was a lot heavier, right? And it was shorter as well. It was like it wasn't even 35 meters long. So according to Swedish rules, I wasn't allowed to use it in the competitions. Um, and it went, it was basically like a 6 or 7 weight or something. I don't know. But then of course I contacted them and said, I mean, do you only look at the laser marking? Because I have a line here, it's laser marked. I haven't done anything with it, but it's definitely not a 5 weight, you know. Uh, and I pushed and pushed, and then they finally said, well, yes, you cannot, if we feel there's something wrong with it, then we'll weigh it as well. And if it's too far out, you'll get disqualified. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm not gonna be casting this.
Yeah.
Uh,
They did, one time they offered. This was a while back, but maybe 8 or 10 8 years or so. But they did offer, or at least Bruce suggested that it might be possible to send us all a line each uh, for the competition. So they would have a different med of a different color, like a special competition line for that event, and then you would have to cast with that. And I think that would help, particularly if, I mean, it's obviously a case of teams going through and measuring 20 lines and finding
no, I
finding
mean,
the best line.
guilty. I do it. I do it. I mean, that's what I do because we can even we buy the line subsidized through the federation, so we get a cheaper price. And then I just order 10 and I weigh them all, I measure them up, all of them, and I document it and everything, and then I cast and I to see which one is the one that's because you can't just look at the numbers, that won't give you the truth. But when you cast with them and then you look at the numbers, you get sort of, all right, this seems to be the sweet spot. This is the kind of
Yeah.
measurements the line needs to have. And I've even done like one of those batches. I even weighed it every like 2 meters of the line, so I got like a profile of how the weight was, distributed on the line as well.
You should go and get it.
So
I think you could probably go and get a job at SA.
nah, I don't know. But I mean, I think it's interesting as well. And I mean that's the thing. If you're gonna go to a competition, you want to make sure you have like the same thing. Like why when I started with a 5 weight rod,
Yeah.
and now I'm on a 10 weight, and now I feel I could probably go to an 11 or a 12 now.
Yeah.
I There's one part of that I don't like, and that's the fact that I do fish with that rod sometimes, but that's very seldom. you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'd rather, but I also know that the challenges of setting some sort of specs on what the rod needs to be is
Yeah.
going to be very difficult,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, I think it would have been amazing if everyone were casting with softer,
Yeah.
or let's say, put it like this, casting with rods you would normally fish with for trout,
Yeah.
which means a 6 weight. That's the average kind of rod people are using most of the time.
Yeah. So, how much difference do you think it makes, that rod stiffness?
Well, I can put it like this: that 41.9 meter cast, that's with a 6 weight guideline rod.
Yeah.
I've
So,
never done it again.
all right. Okay. Yeah.
So uh, I think what the biggest difference is probably that I can use a lot more acceleration and a much more sort of force in my casting with a stiffer rod. I kind of have to.
Yeah.
I think it makes it more consistent. With the softer rods, it's a bit more difficult to find the exact perfect sort of force application and everything. But with a
Mhm.
stiffer one, it's like it's
Mm.
easier that way. But distance wise, I mean the same thing. Remember when Ronnie won the world championships in the 5 weight in Norway? He was
Yeah.
casting with a Hardy 5 weight rod.
Yeah.
It was a noodle, and he was doing 44 meters with it.
Yeah.
of course, you know, it's
Yeah.
probably, you know, it's
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the stiffer the rod, the better.
No.
Uh,
Well, we measured it. So we did it with the when we had the makings of the British team, and there was about the biggest difference we had was 6 feet, and that was pretty much what I threw between the HT6 and a CTS 10, I think it was. But everybody else there was a difference, but 6 feet I think was the biggest difference. So almost, just under 2 meters, or maybe it was 2 meters, as the maximum variation. So everything else was sort of within that. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that possibly it's got to do more with counterflex than actual line speed, because when you have a softer rod, it's going to go into greater counterflex. The loop's going to start off slightly wider, and that's going to maybe be the difference, because it's not a lot of.
yes, I totally agree on that one, and that was my aha moment because when I won the 5 weight in Cumbria, I was using the Sage 9 weight, the method, which is a pretty stiff rod, yeah.
Yeah,
And then I switched. I bought myself a Orvis Helios 3D 10 weight,
mm,
and the 10 weight from Orvis is lighter than the method.
mm,
It's thinner. Like the actual rod is the diameter is smaller.
yeah,
The rotation speed I get is higher, and the counterflex difference is it's huge. Like you know,
yeah,
there's basically hardly any counterflex in that rod, and it's just I fish with the same rod but a 6 weight, and it's the same thing there. It's like it's comparably to other rods I have. There's hardly any counterflex. It's almost like they just stop. Of course, if you make a video, you'll see there is some counterflex, yeah, but it's very little.
yeah.
That's what I love with those rods. It's I don't know what they've done to make. I mean, there are probably a bunch of other brands out there that have similar, that are as good, but just never tried them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but that was the aha moment for me. But also, when you can compare like the softer and the stiffer rods, you need to. There are other variables involved as well, right? So if you're not good enough to make use of the stiff rod, if you can't get the rotation speed to the same speed that you have on the 6 weight, for instance, then it's not comparable. And I think if you would be able to measure those things and you would see that you are on the same, then the difference would be bigger than 6 feet, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we only did it that and that one time. So it would be more in. I mean, it would be interesting to actually do it on a more regular basis and with other rods. I have done it again with a 12 weight. You were talking about 11 there, and we had a 12 weight, and what I found was actually it was harder to be consistent, but there was a cast or two in there that actually went longer, and the loops, the loops were tighter. So I'd imagine we could probably end up going all the way down to almost a broomstick for casting this 5 weight. But I have to say, like you, I much preferred it when the rods were softer. I preferred the more open. I preferred the one. I had to change my stroke because with the softer the rod, I could almost throw the tip into the ground on the back cast. I had this huge 170. Now that I've got something that's a 10 weight, I don't have such a wide an arc anymore. I actually I'm actually.
But I still do. I still hit the ground behind me every now and then with my 10 weight.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well because sea trout distance, which has been really successful for me over the last few years here. I also go a different route than all of the other casters do. I have a much softer rod. Like my rod there is very soft in comparison, and I use the exact same technique as I use in trout distance. Exact same, like if you would video, it's pretty much exactly the same technique. When you see the other guys who are really good at it and casting really far, they don't. They have a totally different technique for the sea trout event. They have very stiff rods, very short arc, the casting arc as well.
Yeah.
and much more force application into that, like more of a, whereas I
Are you,
kind of just
are you using a 10-foot rod? Are you using a 10-foot rod for
yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah, I'm using a 10-foot rod. Yeah.
And what is it, like an 8 weight, or it depends on the weather?
Well, actually, I can't really tell what weight it is because this rod is something that I think Lasse Carlson from Denmark has built at some point in time, and he
Right.
gave it to, and it's built from some blanks from a Danish rod maker that doesn't exist anymore, and it's probably more than an 8 because I used to have an 8. I cast it, and that's even softer, so probably around a 9 or 10, I'd say. But I mean, most guys are using, the same. They're using the T38 or something for the sea trap event, and I don't even know where to put that on a scale because it's definitely broomstick.
Yeah, no, I actually tried that myself 1 year, but I'm not very good at that. It's one of those things. Like you, I don't practice, but unlike you, I'm just not very good.
But also one thing, I don't know. There is a video from I think it's of my winning cast in Norway on the World Championships in sea trout.
Yeah.
And if you're really looking, you'll spot something in that cast that I do differently than everyone else. I'm the only one who's doing it, and I think.
Are you going to say what it is, or do we have to go and look?
Yeah, I can tell you. It's not a sea. I've told a lot of people. I shoot line in the back cast of the sea trout event, and I shoot a lot of line in the final back cast, almost a rod of line sometimes.
And how much overhang do you think you've got there?
I mean, when I begin, I only have the overhang I need to keep the head outside of the rod. Yeah, so just as much as I need for the double haul, But then when I shoot, I'd say anything between 2 and 4 meters of line.
Okay, I think they're probably
depending on the conditions and
do you shoot more if there's more wind, or I mean, or do you try and shoot? I mean, the reason I
I mean, in sea trout, yes, I try to shoot more and more wind.
Yeah.
In trout, I probably shoot more wind as well, but that's because I have a shorter carry during my false casting. So if there's a really strong wind, I tend to shorten my carry and make sure I get like the really, really tight loop in the back cast and then shoot from there, rather than extend my carry and not get as tight a loop in the back cast.
Do you know how much you carry on the 5-way?
I mean, if we look at if you look at the pickup laydowns I do, which is a good measurement because I know exactly where the pickup point is on, right? And then I think the end of the fly line is around 21 meters.
Yep.
That's how much line I have when I do my pickup. And then I shoot in the I shoot in the back cast as much as I bloody can. Let's say in normal, indoor stuff, maybe 26-7 meters of fly line. Somewhere around there. So, maybe if I would just lay it down, maybe my fly would be around the 30-31 meter mark, something like that.
Okay, well that's a lot. So I've really worked on that. So I find that one of the biggest problems, because I can carry 95 usually of the med 5 at sea level just carrying, but if I try and throw that the distance, it doesn't go as far as if I hold back a little bit to around 90. Okay, so there's a certain amount of carry, but the more
you need to check what 95. That's 28.9 meters. Yeah, but that's a lot, to be honest.
It is, but it's too much. It's too much. So the actual amount I measured, it was to start with was 88.5 feet. Do you want to tell you what that is? It's 26.9. Okay, 27 meters is my starting point, and then if I have a bit of wind behind, I increase it by up to about 86, by up to about 6 feet. So I can put up to maybe about just under 2 meters on moor with a tailing wind. But if I try and do that with no wind, I get all these inconsistencies, and I think there's
that's
just too much line too much running line in the top of the loop.
But that's interesting then, because then you and me have a total opposite way of doing this. Because when there's a lot of good wind, I shorten it. And I shoot more in the back cast.
Yeah.
So probably at the end of it, it was kind of similar, And that's because I want to have a length of line while false casting that I can really sort of get through the wind. And my theory around it is when I set the loop in the back cast before I went and to shoot, then it just continues in that shape, just But I mean, I'm not convinced it's like the perfect way of doing it in any way, but it works for me. So I shorten the pickup and the length of the carry and the false casting when there's a lot of wind.
For me, it adds a bit. It makes it a little bit inconsistent, or it can do, because shooting is always a little bit different. You try and shoot, you want to shoot 6 feet and you end up shooting 8 feet, so
it's very complicated, and it's very difficult to become consistent with it.
But I always found when you have got wind behind you, you can get away with extra overhang, as it were, and it just
because the wind will help you. It'll help you straighten it in the delivery anyway. But I think it would be even better if you were able to get that overhang, but with really good, with no slack or anything.
Of
course, that will give you those extra meters as a result as well. So and that's why I'm sort of trying to, and there's also, depending on the wind exactly, because sometimes I even do like a shift where instead of going with my rod tip like this, almost in head high or something, where it's in full flex, I kind of tilt it over and do the backcast on the side. So like on the side backcast to go, and the thinking there is to go low but parallel with the ground. So I don't have like a trajectory. I go low and parallel, and then when I turn around and start going forward, then I still go up, in the delivery. And that's to sort of go under the wind.
I know, I agree with that. And like in Cumbria, we had that huge, strong, consistent wind that we had, that we could it was pretty even for everybody, but it was just difficult to stand up. But and it was actually quite difficult because the wind was sort of coming up. Made it very difficult. If I set my back cast low, I had a real problem. I had to send it a little bit more level than I would have liked to have done standing on this huge platform. But my first back cast,
that was really challenging for me in Cumbria as well, because in those wind conditions, I would like to go low and parallel. But when you're standing on something, 1.5, 2 meters above sea level, you can't go low and parallel. Because the parallel will be 1.5 meters up in the air from the water, so you can't go under the wind, so to speak.
It was very, very difficult there because of that.
And if you have any kind of loop morphing in your backcast, this bouncing bomb or something, you're done. You won't be winning that event in those conditions on that spot. You have to get rid of all of that, and that's when the counterflex in the backcast becomes a real issue as well.
We definitely need a more controlled. A lot of people really struggled, I think, there on that backcast. But what I was thinking there was that, and actually, I tell you, this is something I've noticed with a lot of competitors who actually trained very well, particularly on the 170, is they often don't have their first backcast under control. It's like they pick up from maybe 17 meters, throw a big loop on the first back cast, and then spend 3 or 4 casts trying to get it back under control, and hopefully they manage it so they can go away, instead of doing something much more compact, or a horizontal back cast like we were just discussing there, keeping it under control and then opening up. That's why I've always thought that whatever you end up doing as a launch, if it's a 170 or not, you always have to learn what Steve's doing, like on this blocked open stance distance, to keep it compact and under control before moving up a gear.
But that was also really challenging in Cumbria, the pickup, because pickup on water when you're standing on a platform that's just 20-30 centimeters above the water, it's quite simple. It's quite easy to get the rod tip up correctly and go back, and the line is not lifting, the distance the line needs to go to come up to your casting plane isn't that different from doing it on grass. But in Cumbria, that was a huge difference.
Yeah.
So what happens in Cumbria, where the water level is so low, you lift, you go back, well, the line will start low, and then it will, when you lift and start going backwards, it's going to come up, and then of course it's going to continue in this trajectory, and so I think probably solutions there is just start with shorter line and start with a very controlled false casting, and then increase your carry from there, rather than starting with what you think is what you want, and then having trouble the first 4 or 5 false casts because of it.
Yeah. What do you look for? I mean, I've always tried to take more of a machine gun approach and go on my third cast. So rarely do I go in 4. Sometimes the only time I'll go in 4 is if I felt that I really haven't got it under control, or I've messed up a little bit. So I make my pickup, another cast, final back cast, and then go. Whereas I sometimes watch guys standing up there obviously looking for the perfect back cast, and they might be making 8 or 10 false casts. But as far as I'm concerned, I think I would rather get more shots out there. Maybe it's because I come from the 2-minute background as opposed to whatever we have now, 4 minute. But I've always felt if I can get 7 shots away in those 2 minutes, hopefully I'll hook one up, or maybe 2. So I've always kind of felt that more is better than less. But what about you? What do you look for in that?
Same. I would say we're very similar there. I want to go as quickly as possible, and I practice the same way. I want to find that perfect backcast on as soon as possible, and then I go, and I don't fiddle around a lot. I generally would go the same. I pick up, I do one backcast forward, shoot in the next backcast, and then I deliver.
Yeah, okay.
That's my standard approach to it.
Do you have a routine?
Unless you got side winds, and then you have to sort of fiddle around a bit. But yeah.
Do you have a routine that you go through when you go up? So for example, I go up, and the first cast I try to put down is not 100%. It might be 80%, and then I might work on. So I've got a little program that I do. I don't, unless conditions are absolutely perfect, and I must go in the first cast because the wind might drop. But otherwise, I'll try to build up into it, because otherwise I can end up in a situation where if I haven't made the first shot, I haven't got it quite right, I don't quite get into it.
Get stressed, and
yeah.
I go for it every time. I don't have any sort of let's do a safe cast or something first. I go for it every time. And I think that's part of what you said there, is the reason as well is you need to take the sometimes the conditions are such that you only get one shot. Yeah. And you need to be going when that happens.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
And do you so you didn't train for the last one, you just got sick and then magically got well and won 2 golds, right? Which is fantastic. Ordinarily, you're obviously training through the winter, but ordinarily, how many days a week do you train? Do you just train before the competition, or is it like a regular thing that you're in?
It's a regular thing, and so winter time it's once a week in general, and there's 2 or 3 hours when I do that.
Yeah.
But come springtime, when we can be outdoors, there are weeks where I'm casting 4 or 5 times, and normally 2 or 3 hours every time.
Yeah.
And then comes sort of early summer, or when the fishing season starts, then I do less practicing. And then before a competition, I wouldn't say all the way up until the competition, but maybe up until 1 week before, I practice intensively. But then I kind of stop for a few days before the competition, because I don't want to. I don't know. That probably is just a mental thing, I think.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I train. I mean, when we have a 2-hour indoor session, I hardly sit down for 2 hours. I mean, the only time I'm not casting during those 2 hours is when I go back to switch gear or something.
How do you structure your training?
I just go out there and
I mean,
whoop it.
you just go. You must do adjust certain things. You play with certain things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, yes, of course. I mean, there's normally one or two things I'm practicing or trying to tweak, and then I'm just tweaking that thing and casting, like testing a few things. Sometimes I have Ulrich or someone looking at what I'm doing, and I'm asking them like, am I doing what I think I'm doing? You know, to get some confirmation on that I'm actually tweaking the right thing and not messing something else up. But that's normally the way I do it. So I have some sort of idea of something. Right now, I'm not tweaking anything, to be honest. Right now, I'm just consistency.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to go out there and sort of be able to consistently deliver good casts, not getting any poor casts in. Like, and the way that that's what I commented on your interview that you had on YouTube. I commented because you were speaking about consistency. And it was actually Stefan who got me into this. We started when we were doing that. We put like a marker on 30 meters, and then both me and him were casting, and you had to do 10 casts in a row to over 30. And if you missed, let's say you did 4, and the 5th one you missed, you started from the beginning again. So you had to do 10 casts in a row. And then when you've done that, you moved it to 32 or 33 or something. And then you did the same thing again. And then you moved it to 35. And then, of course, when we started, it was difficult. All of them were difficult. And the 35 was impossible. I couldn't do 10 casts in a row over 35. But we were practicing this for quite a long time. And I was doing it on my own as well. And nowadays, I can probably put it on 35 and just do 10 casts over 35. In those, you know, in those, that's the thing as well. What I've noticed is if I go to some other indoor arena, I won't be able to do 10 casts over 35. There's something with like being you know, where I practice the same visuals all the time. You know, it's like when you come to a new place, you get a bit disoriented when you're casting. At least I do. So it takes some time for me to get used to like the surroundings and the light levels and whatever. So that definitely impacts my ability to be that consistent.
Wow, amazing. Must be picking up something in your vision that you're maybe not, you know, the mind's used to focusing on, maybe to straighten everything up.
But I think it's also like a confidence kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
When I go out on the one spot, I always stand when I practice. I know everything. I know exactly, you know, it's like it's my home more or less. Yeah. And then I go to some competition and we're in another arena and all of a sudden everything's different. And that's why I think being able to practice on the same court that we're going to compete on is key for me, not because of, you know, fixing my technique or whatnot, just to get used to everything, to get used to, all right, there's the tree over there that's straight on, you know, that's a good visual reference. And, you know, yeah, that's why normally like on championships, I tend to go out, you know, very early in the morning or something where everyone else is still in bed. So I can get like 1 hour of just casting on the same spot to get used to standing there, to get used to the surroundings.
Yeah, I like that idea that I always, when it's going well, I feel that I own the place. I feel that I feel like I'm on top of the world, and this is the very point, and everything around me is like king of the mountain, you know. But that's only when it's going well. So, but I try to get to that point so that it goes well, if you know what I mean. If I can get mentally to there, it makes it a lot easier.
I mean, and that's the thing. And like some competitions in Sweden where they hold them, some places I hate because I never get that feeling. I always get a feeling when I come there, it's a feeling of insecurity because I've never really managed to perform at a level where I think I performed at my best. I might have gotten some good results there, but I've never felt like this was yes, you know. And then there are some places we go to for competitions where I always feel when I go away from there, I feel like I really outperformed myself today.
Yeah.
And when I go there, I always have that same feeling, like similar to what you're explaining. Like, it's almost like this is my castle and you can't come in. It's, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. It's you do. I mean, before you go, do you sort of visualize it? Do you see yourself going off there and making 300-foot casts and the crowd going wild?
no, no. I mean, I've done other sports before. I mean, I used to play football and whatnot, and done a lot of like, not a lot, but some to some extent, some sort of sports psychology practicing, you know,
Yeah.
mindfulness kind of things and whatnot. But that's not something I do have routines, and I think at the last World Championships, some people were a little bit annoyed with me for my routines. I mean, I normally, you know, before the final starts or before the qualification starts, when there's nothing going I normally play music, and preferably like on speakers and not on my headphones, and I kind of, you know, let loose and you know, just go a bit whimsy, and you know, mostly to just be in a very relaxed and happy mood.
Right.
Yeah,
And everybody,
so.
and everybody else is annoyed.
No, but I mean, I get it. I get if someone is very sort of, you know, I need to focus, I need to, and then this idiot jumping around and dancing and playing music. And that's not the point. I'm not doing it to disturb anyone. I'm doing it for myself. So I realized that probably I should be doing this with my headphones on, so I don't disturb anyone else.
Well, I watched Maxine McCormick there. She was jumping on a tramp. Well, it was quite a few years ago when she was about
Estonia, yeah.
Jumping on a trampoline and reading a book and just
exactly. Well, everyone else was out there getting prepared, and you know, and then she just went out there and, you know, won it.
Yeah. Did you see
But
her?
she was 14 years old back then, so
Yeah.
I mean, she was so.
So she cast 80 points in the accuracy. I don't know if that was that in the final or was that in the
No, in the qualifications.
qualification?
It was wicked. It was wicked.
Unbelievable.
And it wasn't like, you know, okay, maybe one or two of them were, you know, close to the ring, but most of them were just bam, straight in the middle.
Yeah, it's incredible. Do you train that at all?
No, I don't. And I don't. But I mean, I train it when I compete, more or less. And that's also, I'm very inconsistent. I can do some rounds that are really good, but I can do so poor rounds as well. It's like, and even during a round, I can have like consistently putting it in the middle in one of the targets, and then in one go of it, I just go 3 meters too far, or you know. So I don't have any consistency. But at the World Championships, actually, I was the best one in the Swedish team.
Yeah,
I was just 1 point from qualifying to the finals.
What did you score?
59, I think.
We just.
And I had a 0 on the final target. I had a lot of time left, and I was like, I'm really gonna hit this one now, and I missed it. I got a 0. If I was a 1 there, I would have been in the final. A 5, I would have actually been, I think, second or first in the qualification.
Well, I tell you, I have to say, right. So my goal after watching Steve Rager throw 78, the next time I'm Norway, I thought my goal is to get to the finals, and then I'll be happy. That's what I wanted. And I scored. I can't remember what I scored, but I not only got to the finals, but I was in pole position, which was definitely what I wanted. I was just
no, because the nerves come in. Yeah.
So yeah, it didn't go so well in the final. I can't remember. Obviously, I'm just not that good, you know. So I was just able to get there. So in some ways, I'd have preferred not to have gotten to the finals, but you know,
I think the accuracy event is at least for me, it's the most difficult one, because you have to have a kind of focus that is very difficult for me to sort of attain. Even if I, you know, when we had these like meetups with the whole national team and everything, and we do this knowledge sharing and whatnot, and people are sort of sharing how they do accuracy, because we have Niklas Eriksson. He's normally, like, he's hands down best in Sweden. He can do 70 highs, you know. He's really, really good at it. And he has this thing of like, his mental focus is just basically in the middle of the target all the time. There's nothing else going on in his head, more or less, you know. And he's, you know, consistent, very consistent in his casting. Whereas I am like, you know, I can start thinking about something else, because you know, I kind of lose focus, and that's not helping. Trust
No,
me.
no, it's a very because every cast counts, you know. Unlike distance, where we can throw one off, you know,
Well, yeah, I
completely
mean,
different direction. It doesn't matter.
if
I
you
got
look at some of my qualification results in Norway, my final cast took me to the final. If not, I would have been like 20th or something.
yeah, yeah,
That's the thing in the distance events. You only need one.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas in accuracy, you need six, you need all of them.
yeah. And
You can't really, you know.
but it's also what we do. I'm sure if we spent time focused on that as opposed to distance, we would probably be, you know, I
Yeah,
don't.
I actually have a bit of a plan because I enjoyed it in Norway. I enjoyed casting the accuracy, and it went reasonably well for me. And I realized this is probably something I'd like to become better at. So I'm gonna set up because where I have my cabin, you know, the lake and everything is there. So I'm gonna put some targets into the lake and build a bit of a training platform there,
Yeah,
and basically, you know, just every now and then go down and do a couple of rounds and practice a few things. So
yeah. That's I
yeah,
know.
I'm gonna try to
I've got
practice
the
that a
hoop.
bit.
I've got the hoops on the roof because I figured, well, if guests come here instead of playing pool, which I got quite good at because I was playing pool for 5 hours a night, why don't I put the accuracy rings out and we play, you know, target casting, and then I think you know that then you'll. If I can become as good at targets as I am at pool, then I'll be quite happy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, there was one thing watched one of your videos about this pick up lay down competition or game that you were talking about, where basically you start with a certain amount of line, you pick up and you need to shoot to I can't remember, and then and if you you need to shoot so that you get all of the line, all of the
Oh yeah,
loose
yeah,
line.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then you give it to the next guy who takes out another meter and does the
yeah.
same thing. Did it? I think that could be really, really interesting competition format. Like,
Mm.
and it would be quite exciting
It's
as well.
fun. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fun. I've done it. I've done it a lot. Yeah, it would actually be quite good prize. But I've done it a lot with with instructors at different meets and so on. And it's nice because you can do it in the dark because you don't have to
yeah,
see. All you have to see is the real. You just have to be a bit careful because some people, you know, like to like to find little ways of cheating. But it's I've always enjoyed that, and I'm sure that's one of that because of that game is one of the reasons I found it so much easier to come here and fish on pick up and lay down shots where I don't actually have
yeah.
to where I'm not going to force cast. So it was
But
definitely
also thinking about like this from if you look at it as a format of the competition, I think this sort of immediate feedback you get
mm,
is what would make it exciting also to watch, right?
yeah,
Because you know this guy's casting now. If it doesn't make it, he's out.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's very easy to determine if he made it or not.
yeah,
So visually, it's yeah. So I'm gonna propose we do that, and not tomorrow when we have our because tomorrow we actually have a instruction day. We have some beginners and some intermediates and whatnot coming who are not part of the club, but they're coming, and then we have 2 hours of
yeah,
teaching them. We're using this triangle technique from Lee on the
yeah.
beginners to get them, to teach them. So we're doing that tomorrow, but then probably next Sunday I'm gonna suggest that we do a bit of a fun competition and
Yeah.
suggest this one.
We'll do
I
that.
think
Well,
we'll.
I think you've got to eliminate that bit where you shake the line up because I've realised you can probably shake just about all the head out and then go.
Yeah. Correct.
So
No, but what I was thinking as well is I think, all right, I like the fact that you just have to get it out, right? But if you can probably combine it with the distance as well, because you could probably say for each, you could almost have like a more exact measurement, which means you don't have to get it to go all the way up to the reel, but you have to get the flight to a certain distance, which means needs to go all the way,
yeah,
right? Because I know some of my casting indoors, I can get like, I don't know, 15 meters of nylon that I have, after the med. I
yeah,
can get all of that out, but then it's the med is just a big pile, you know. Around 30, there's a big pile of fly line, and then from there's a straight line, and then I managed to shoot out a lot, but it's not a very good cost.
mm,
Uh,
Yeah.
So perhaps you should have, I don't know. Let's see. I've never tried that, so that's why I want to try it. I want to see, because I think it could be a really fun. I mean, we've done some other quirky things here when we've had our sort of, more social stuff going on, barbecues and whatnot. We play fly casting golf, for instance, which is quite fun. Where you start with your driver, meaning your salmon distance. That's your first cast, and then you go a sea trout distance, and then a trout distance, and then an accuracy cast at the end.
Fantastic. I like.
Yeah.
I always fancied. I always thought we should have like a freestyle. Like casting. I've got that video. I put all the loops up in the air and casting, and I think that we could do that set to music, and have like the visual aesthetics competition, or even synchronized. You could have two.
Yeah, exactly. And then
it.
judges go like scoring between 1 and 10, depending on how beautiful it was. So,
Oh, yeah, it'd be
yeah,
quite cool.
fun. Yeah.
Well, I always, because the other one to do is with the Lumi lines. If you could have synchronized casting with Lumi lines to music, I think that would just be absolutely brilliant at the end of at the end of the competition. So
Yeah, I think and this is something I'm quite interested in. Is like how do we develop the competition formats? Yeah, develop them both so that they're more even for everyone, less of a chance involved, and make them more interesting to watch. Because I think that, I mean, if it's gonna become anything more than it already is, we need to develop the format. And I already know there are people who are basically considering not doing this anymore because they train a lot and they go to a championship and they get really poor conditions and they have no chance at winning anything.
Yeah.
And I had the same feeling for many years because I've been so many times in Fagernes in Norway, standing there in dead calm conditions, hitting 36.5 meters, knowing this was a really good cast.
Yeah.
But not everyone else. It's enough if 8 other people have a bit of wind.
Yeah.
Then you're. Yeah.
I've been out of it a few times because of that, and it's very and we've had a finals affected as well, as we know. I mean, even in those whatever many minutes it is, the wind can change or turn around on you, or I was there in Estonia and the wind dropped, and then after 3 minutes the wind came up.
Yeah.
Like,
and this is I think here also the organizers have a big responsibility to actually pick a spot where you don't have normally that inconsistency. Right. So the one in Estonia was terrible spot to be in. Fagernes is a fantastic place, beautiful, really fun, terrible place to have competitions in. The one in Norway last time now was very good in that sense because it was, but they still did some mistakes, and I think the biggest mistake they did was on the trout distance qualification day. There was no wind in the morning, and I asked the organizers, can we push the start for, let's say, an hour so the wind can pick up a little bit? And they like, no, we have no time. We have no, and I respect that. If there is no time available, there isn't, then they'll have to go with it. But then at the end of it, there was time. There was 3 hours of nothingness after the qualifications. They could have postponed it with 1 or 2 hours and gotten very even conditions for everyone. Now instead there were like maybe the first 5 couples out. They had either no wind or they had wind against.
Yeah.
Ulrich did 29, I think.
Sure.
It's So
I mean, it can. I mean, it's never going to be 100% fair, is it? There's always going to be some variations. Even indoors is not necessarily going
to of course
be as close as it's ever going to get. But if it could be done, it could be fair. I think heats has to be the way. Heats or knockouts, and like if I would have said, and then even you're right, you need to have less people coming to give yourself more time and that to give yourself the ability to have more heats. But if you had heats and then of that first heat enough people went through, not just one, not just the top, not just 1 out of every 10, but say 2 or 3 out of every 10, and then narrowed it down and had another heat and then have the knockouts. I think that would be a theory.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you can have like a lucky loser kind of setup as well. So from the heat, the winners, or top 3 or 2 or whatever they go through, and then you have 1 or 2 more spots where those who did not win their heats, then you judge them by distance. Okay, then chance will be involved, but at least there's, because you could be drawn against the top 5.
Exactly.
Maybe you were 6th best at the event, but you were eliminated early because you met the best guys in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think this is something you can do. If you look at, I tend to watch a lot of winter sports on TV, and especially cross-country skiing and sprint. Amazingly fun to watch because of the heats, the knockouts, all of the stuff that we're talking about now. And the way they do it, they have a pre-qualification, right? So they basically just ski for a certain distance, and they measure the time, and then based on that, you get a seeding, and then and then there's I think there's 4 or 6 heats, and then basically the seeding, then you pick a heat. The one who has the first seeding goes and I want heat number 1, and then the second one goes and says, he took heat number 1. I don't want to go up against him early. I'll take heat number 2.
Right.
And you just go down that way. So you get to sort of choose which heat you want to go in. So the better seeding you have, the more choices you have. If you're last in the seeding, there's going to be one spot available somewhere, and that's your spot.
Yeah.
And this, we don't even need to have to do a pre-qualification for that. We could tell the national teams that they have to prioritize their casters.
Yeah.
So basically, they just say, this is our best. He's the best at trout distance, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They are going to compete. And then every national team who has been seeded number 1 in their team, there's a draw on who goes first to pick a heat. And then you just go by that. So
yeah.
And then even the choice of the heat becomes an exciting thing.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things when you watch this cross-country skiing on TV, it's quite exciting to see, all right, who's going to pick which heat. And there's always someone who's going to go like, I don't care. I want to go in heat number 1 because that gives us me if I go all the way through to the final, I get the most rest before the final. So I'm going to pick heat number 1, even though these 3 people who are really good have already chosen that heat.
Yeah.
So there's excitement and there's some strategy going on as well around that. And we could be doing that as well. I also wanted to mention as well, when it comes to like the organizers of the World Championships and different events, I mean, I know they're all trying their hardest to produce amazing events, and they're doing a really good job at it. And I think we're still in a sort of it's still quite a young sport. We're still learning things, and it takes a bit of time to improve these things. And they are changing things now in a way they think will lead to improvements. So let's see. Let's hope that they're right, and let's hope they're open to, if it doesn't, to try other things. And I think we could, on national level, we should already be testing these things. I mean, the PT Open Championship there's nothing in the rules that states that we can't do it as a knockout competition. So why should probably try it to see,
Yeah. And then so that makes it fairer. And then I think the finals should be more entertaining. Instead of 2 casts, with your top 8, have a knockout so that the very final gold silver is won. Either 3 people casting together, if that's possible, the final 3, or 1 against 1. I think that
there is another thing we could do as well, which I've entertained a bit in my head. If you imagine high jump in track and field events, high jump.
Yeah.
Then they put the bar on a certain level, and everyone has to go over that, right? And then they increase it.
Yeah.
We could do exactly the same thing. We could say, all right, do trout distance gear. We start with the bar at 30. Everyone gets 1 shot. Or maybe you get 3, I don't know, but you get some shots at it. And if you manage to go over it, then you go into the 32, and then people are slowly eliminated. And at some point, there's only 1 person who can beat the bar.
Yeah.
That's also quite an entertaining way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you can do it very visual as well, and easier to arrange as well, because you don't have to measure every call. You don't know. No one cares how hard it went, just care that you passed the bar.
Yeah, that would also work. Yeah, there's because there's been some interest to film it, to make it. I mean that's what it needs.
Yeah.
Needs to be filmed. It needs. It can go on YouTube. It'd be better, even better if it went out on TV somewhere on some, one of these.
I mean, we've had a few occasions when we have our national championships where we've been in discussions with TV about live, coverage and commentators, and but then you also need live results to be able to show on screen to make a good production, and honestly, now in Norway it's the first time we actually had live results, and it was because I developed a system using Google Sheets that they used at the World Championships. So we had screens where you could see all of the results coming in immediately as they were reported. And that makes it also much more exciting.
Absolutely. My parents, they went up to Cumbria and they went and watched, and they said, "We got no idea what's going on." But
exactly, there's someone standing there. Yeah, exactly. So because I mean, back then there was like someone writing something in Excel, and then every half an hour they printed it and posted it somewhere. That's not good enough. It needs to be the same thing with in the accuracy event would also be so much more entertaining, right? If there was a scoreboard and every time the judges, they input it, and now you can see 5, 3, 1, 5 and the total, and you can see the standing as well at the same time.
Yeah.
Because that would also make that much more exciting to watch. Than it is today. Because now you can see someone is casting, and you can hear sometimes you can hear what the judges are saying, how they're scoring it, but you don't know what their total points are unless you've been there from the get-go and you've counted yourself.
Yeah.
Then you would know what the total score is.
And the thing I really I preferred it originally when the finals were on a separate day. So you had your heats, you got through, and then the last day was just finals, and everybody was watching. So everybody would go and watch each final. That was much better. I mean, because sometimes the finals now is immediately after the competition. Other people are still doing heats in other places. They're not going to watch.
Yeah, or preparing for the next event. Yeah. So if they got knocked out from trout, they're probably off practicing their sea trout because they're going to go. So they don't have time to watch the finals. But in Norway, it was quite good, actually. There was a lot of people watching. The only thing I didn't like that there was quite a long distance between Spey and the other events.
Right.
So you had to sort of pick, I'm gonna look at the overhead today, and then you stayed there. You could go around, yes, it wasn't too far to walk around for sure, but people really didn't. So there was almost like we had two competitions going on. There was a Spey event somewhere, and then there was some overhead events somewhere, and there wasn't much cross. And that's also something that's happened. Like, I mean, some of the guys in Norwegians and whatnot in Spey who are really good, they're also very good in salmon, but they don't enter the salmon distance event anymore. They just do Spey.
Why is that?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, they even have two different team captains. They are in Norway. They have a team captain for the Spey events and another team captain for the overhead event.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and I think that's I don't know. It'd be better if we got it more together,
Yeah. They have a lot more competitors in Norway, don't they? I mean, they've had this going on for quite a long time.
Yeah, and they got a lot of new people coming in as well. There's a couple of guys now at the World Championships that I've only heard of, right? Rumors about someone called something who started casting, and they were there, and they're really good as well. So they have it's growing for them. They get more people into the sport, whereas we struggle with that in Sweden. I mean, we get every other year we get another person in, more or less on that level, and then some people actually leave as well. So it's not really growing that much in Sweden, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think this is also part of it is the formats of it. Like if we can, whatever we can do so that fly fishermen feel like it's more connected to the fishing, then I think it's much easier to get more people into the sport. And what's happened over since I started until now is that we're moving in the other direction. We're moving, separating it more. And me myself, and I am part of that problem because the gear we're moving towards and stuff moves it away from the actual fishing, which is not good.
It's always a bit of balance, isn't it, between what competitors want how the rules go, how to make it fair, and what would bring more people in. I think, on the one hand, I don't know. I mean, making it more fishing orientated or easier to come in, I don't know if it's ever going to really bring more people into the sport, simply because if we made, let's say we made the heads, instead of a med head of whatever it is, 68 feet, we had a 30-foot head or a 35-foot head. We're not going to cast the same distance, but I don't know if anybody would. I don't think it's going to encourage a lot more people just to come into the sport anyway, because they've suddenly got a head that they can carry.
No, I mean, I think you're right on that. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think it's more I don't know. I can't really put words to it, but I think it has, because I know I have a lot of friends who fly fish a lot, but they don't do fly casting, right?
Yeah.
But they do practice. I mean, they do go out on a grassy lawn somewhere and practice, so they are doing fly casting.
Yeah.
But they're not. They don't want to join us when we're doing it, and I think it's because they're afraid that someone's going to look at them and say, "Shit, he's not casting very well, is he?" You know, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We have to get, in order to move forward. We just have to get rid of that, because we all started at. I mean, I started. I was throwing 105, but most of the people who I've got involved in casting from Britain around me were all casting about 70. But within 6 months they're casting 110, 115, and then within 1 or 2 years they're suddenly very competitive. So it's all a process, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also know that there's been, at least in Sweden, there were some suggestions at some point that instead of using any rod you want in trout, we would all use the same rod. And this was because the manufacturer wanted to sponsor the competitions, right? And of course that would be in their interest then. We didn't like that, it wasn't what we wanted. But now when I think of it, I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, I love the times when we meet up and then all of a sudden someone says, let's do a shoot up with this stuff, whatever it is, I like that. And I think that's when you really get you can see who has the skill to adapt their technique depending on what stuff you put in their hands as well. It's a different kind of competition, yes, but I think it's really fun. I'm not totally against it.
That's
but I like it more. I like it more if we don't know. If we would say, okay, next championships, everyone's going to cast with this manufacturer of rod, exactly this rod and this line. If we knew that a year in advance, it wouldn't be as fun. It would be more fun. And I'm not saying we're going to do this on the World Championships. It's maybe the wrong format for, but still, I like those kind of things. I think it's and that's fishing, Me, that's very close to fishing, because I don't use the same lines every time I go fishing. Sometimes it's an intermediate, sometimes it's a 6-weight, sometimes it's a, depending on where I go, and I think it would be quite fun to do more of that stuff.
I was thinking actually after the next Worlds, maybe, because there's always so many guys from Sexy Loops here. I was thinking maybe afterwards we have a day where we sort of get together and have a fun day, because it's not very often we see each other, and it's a shame that if we see each other, it's always just this quite focused competition. And if we did that, we could have a shootout, like the old ways it did with
exactly
3 weights and 12 weights, and you just don't know, cane rods and everything else. I think that would be fun. I mean, but if you look at when the Best of the West, which sort of started this whole 5-weight thing, they had a choice of 3 rods. So 3 manufacturers came out, and that's where the TCR started to appear in these competitions. And I don't know if they made it stiffer, just for the competition. Who knows? But it was a bit of a rogue in that series. But that was where all this interest in 5-weight distance sort of originally came. So that kind of fairness was originally in that competition, and it's just that we've since gone down this casting pokers sort of.
Yeah, and to be honest, as I said, I don't. I think it's difficult to. I don't think it would help our sport to formalize that into one of the events or something. But I still think it's one of the most fun things we do is when someone just takes a rod and a reel and says, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
Because we even did at some point, we used the MPR, the practice, with the MEV line on it.
With the 5, it is a sort of a 5-weight, isn't it? It goes quite a long way.
Yeah, Frederick was casting almost 120 feet with it.
Yeah, I went fishing with it.
But I mean,
I went fishing with it in Tasmania, trying to catch brown trout on it. But I just like catch it like this, and the rod's over like this.
Yeah. But I mean, it's but that's the kind of stuff I think is I remember as well with in different when we went to different competitions, we've been doing some crazy things, going out in the middle of the night, casting with our non-dominant casting hand, and fun stuff like that. Which, by the way, is probably what for my fishing I should practice more with my left hand.
Yeah.
I can't cast with my left hand at all.
I'm not very good. This is one of those things. So I was in, I think it was the first Norwegian finals, and the wind changed on me, and I had to back cast. And I thought I should learn to cast 170 left-handed, and if I could do that as well as I can off the right, I would have no problems. And I would win this. So I really thought I'm going to do that. Of course, I didn't. And then the next time I was in the finals, exactly the same thing happened.
Bugger.
But
Magnus Hedman, he of course he casts further with his right, but he's really, really good with his left as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure if we spent the time doing it. I
think Lasse as well I think he's also almost like can do both.
Yeah. Oh, what a great ability to have. I noticed this. So the difference to me, right, when I turn around to look at the target, I'm right-eyed dominant, right? I can see the target with my right eye, and I'm just turned that way. And if I close my right eye, I can't see it, right? Because my nose is in the way of my left eye.
Yeah.
So if I go the other way, I want to.
You have to go really far.
My right eye, and that's why I'm turning too much. So I thought, what about an eye patch? If I put an eye patch over my right eye, it will force me to look at the target with my left eye. Now that's work in progress.
It's really nice chatting. Like 2.5 hours even.
Yes. I might edit this down a little bit.
Yeah, I can imagine you need to do that.
There's a lot in there. Yeah, no, it's always going to be really good talking to you. A lot of interesting stuff there, mate. Really, I learned quite a lot there. It's nice. There's a lot in there, particularly about how you train and how you're developing it. Consistency, really interesting. Yeah. I think that will be interesting for quite a lot of people actually. And always
let's hope.
Always good to chat fishing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool, man.
All right, man.
Yeah.
You have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Bernt. Great talking to Bernt there. Looking forward to catching up in Sweden, particularly if the World Championships are there. And I'm pretty sure that Bernt will definitely be going for a bit of a swim at the end of that one. Thanks, mate.